Century Superhuman. And I know that the answers are inside. Yeah, I am a 21st Century Superhuman. Now is the time. Come on everyone, let's celebrate. We are the children of the sun. I can see you when I look into your eyes. We are the same, we are light, yeah, we are one. Here now, hear my ancient prayer and sing along. We are awakening as one. And we can make a difference, yeah, we can be the change it takes to make the world a lot more fun. But if you're feeling kinda down and you need some inspiration to remember who you are, oh now child, please don't frown. You can choose a new vibration and these words can take you far. I am a 21st Century Superhuman.
Hello, welcome to the 21st Century Superhuman guest show. It is spring, and at least in the Northern Hemisphere, where most of us are who are putting this show out, although we may have listeners from the Southern Hemisphere where it's actually fall. But we're going to talk about spring today and growing things. We have with us Daniel Atlas, who is a master gardener, and I call him a master Jedi energy practitioner. I have been in gardens with him and seen plants that are so huge and that just bow over when he gets close to them. And it's an amazing thing. So, Daniel, why don't you say hello a minute? And got to pop your mic open there. So, and we have with us also my co-host, Ken Chorley and Cami B. We're going to talk about spring equinox and what some of the intense events that have been happening. We're in probably one of the most powerful portals I remember being in many years. So this spring equinox is bringing with it a lot of change to planet Earth and a lot of opening to us being able to live in new ways. So we're excited to be here on the CCN network with Biggie and Mel, the Conscious Consumer Network, and a whole tribe of amazing awake people around the planet who are bringing forth how to live in new ways as who we are as creator beings. And growing things is a really creative process. So Daniel, go ahead and say hello.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about, are you growing things already this spring?
Yes. Basically every fall, I plant garlic. Wow. And it takes about 9 months to do the whole process. So I plant those in the fall, and I have some onions planted, and There's a couple of other things that I have that they're sprouting, or I just planted seeds to transplant when the weather gets a little bit warmer, because right now it's a little bit too cold. But I'll be planting a lot of early crops, like salads, greens, kale, chard, cabbage, broccoli. Yeah, so
cool. Well, let's jump over to that. Let's jump over to that in a couple minutes, and we'll get into that in detail. And
okay,
Ken, you were just out playing with the elements up on a bluff somewhere, right? And we're glad to have you here with us today.
Yeah, I was actually going to try to broadcast from up there, but it was a little too windy, and so I made the choice to come back, and I just got back here right on time. But I was up there meditating and just hanging out with nature where I choose to be most of the time. I mean, my preferred location at all times is outside, somewhere far into the woods.
I read the other day, being out in nature raises our kind of our life force about 800%. So yeah, I like even sleeping outside.
I think if it wasn't for nature, all of us, well, those of us who are using nature to help sort of transmute these energies, all of us would be feeling the craziness that we're seeing around us.
Yes, it really is a balancer. It's healing, it's equalizing. So we want to teach ourselves how to be out in nature more and growing things and learning how to grow our food. And Ken, I know you have a real interest in urban farming and aquaponics. And so we're going to get into talking about that in a little bit too, which is really exciting. So Cami girl, my longtime co-host from Bridge to Paradise, and we're just making a few changes right now, kind of changing the dynamic a little bit, but we're all still here together in this amazing tribe of awake people on the planet, and so grateful that we have each other as family and friends, and to collaborate our thought and our energy with makes all of us better, makes all of us stronger, makes all of us brighter.
Well, and it takes the pressure off too, because we're all going through so many transitions and getting pulled in so many different directions and working on so many different things that we need a tribe in order to make it happen. You know, like when one person can't show up, like you're going to Peru in a couple weeks. I mean, we just need safety nets everywhere and people that are of like mind to sort of pick up the ball and keep it going while we're focused elsewhere.
Oh, yeah. So we've got some really amazing things going on with spring equinox. Mm-hmm. And I know you've kind of done some research this week, paying attention to what's going on. Pluto-Uranus square. We're in probably one of the biggest portals I remember in many, many years.
Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence either, the way it was set up. I mean, we're like literally on the last of the 7 Pluto-Uranus squares that's happened over the last 3 years. And if you can remember back to 2012 when these started, and even prior to that, because they're such slow-moving planets. And I talked about this a little bit last night, but I'm going to try to go into more detail this time because I got to organize.
So first of all, before we jump into that, what is spring equinox? I mean, let's just talk about that a little bit, because that is kind of like the theme of our show today. And I think that just that in and of itself, the Earth is at a certain place in its orbit, and
it's at the very center point on the equinox, so everything's balanced. There's no pole in either direction, but the magnification is intense during the equinox. It's the most intense magnification of our electromagnetic field of any day of the year, and it's happening in a few hours.
And Ken has the exact time on that.
Yeah. Ken? What time is it?
I believe it was 3:46.
Like Eastern time?
I believe so. I'm not too sure.
And Jeremy had mentioned that this is the day you can set an egg on the counter and it will stand on end. Yep. I haven't tried that. It would be really fun to do it. Has anybody ever tried it?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people in past alignments, and the equinox happens twice a year, and you can do this, but you can stand a broom up and it'll just stand there on the floor. And at some of these grand alignments that we have, you can do even crazier stuff than that. But yeah, twice a year you can stand an egg up and it just sits there.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if it's spring or fall. It's just a reset point. It's literally it's like the pendulum swinging back to the middle, just pausing for a second before it starts swinging again.
Right. Ken, what was that you were tossing in there?
What's that? I said balance.
Balance.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. It's it's kind of like a fresh start. So yeah, it's a really important time, especially with this super moon. It's one of the biggest moon forces we'll have this year, and we'll have a bunch of them, more than usual. I think we'll have like 7 of those this year, which is very unusual to have that many super moons. It's like, of all the things that are going on in the cosmos, it's clear to see that there's some sort of agenda pushing us and pulling us. And the reason I like paying attention to it is because when you start noticing the correlations between things that are happening internally, externally, individually, collectively during these periods, it's clear to see that they're having a significant effect on us. So
yeah, and one of the really interesting aspects of that is we were just talking about nature and how important it is to be in nature and how it balances us and makes us more healthy. And the truth is, when people used to live tribally on the earth or be out in nature all the time, they were much more aware of these cycles and changes. And if you're outside and you see the moon is actually bigger, or you realize there's actually I know so many people who were woken up at 3:00 this morning when the solar eclipse was going on the other side of the planet. So here we are in a new moon, supermoon, solar eclipse, spring equinox.
Yeah, and then just a few days ago was the Pluto-Uranus square, which, I mean, talk about being able to correlate significant events. The squares are actually really uncommon. They only happen every 80 years or so. The last one was our last huge economic upheaval with the Great Depression and all of that stuff. And then we had some conjunctions with Pluto and Uranus in the 60s, obviously, that started a bunch of social revolutions. But to have as many as we had 7 exact squares in the last 3 years. And like I was talking about last night, if you've seen the pictures of all the revolutions going on around the planet and things happening to our financial systems and our governmental systems, and I mean, everything is shifting right now.
And this is what we talk about in 21st Century Superhuman a great deal, just that we've moved into these accelerated fields of light and we're getting blasted with gamma rays, X-rays, photons.
And then on top of that, the sun was kicking up big time the last week or so. We had 7 flares in 72 hours last week. We had one of the biggest X4s this week that's like bigger than anything we normally have. I don't think we've had one of those in a decade or something. So it's literally just like an amalgamation of all these forces. It's the celestial tools being used to, push us in the direction that it's trying to get us to go in. The force is intent in getting us into a certain space, and it's not going to let up until we, get on board with it.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Ken.
I just wanted to say that solar flare that was on Tuesday.
Yeah.
That was an amazing day.
Yeah, that was crazy.
I spent most of the day out, and man, did I have a good time, because it was so easy. I mean, it was like butter. Like anyone could have went out and did it. And that night I ended up talking to a group that was having a discussion on the book, 21st Century Superhuman. And I told them the same thing. I was like, today was an unbelievable day. I mean, anyone could have went out and placed their hand up to something and see the movements. It was so thick.
And that's the light charges. The light charges do that when the light, quantity increases, and that's what our future is going to look like. I mean, every day is going to be like that. They're just easing us into it right now.
It's true, and getting that realization that we are part of this energetic field that we live in, that we are interchanging with it at all times, that creation is ebbing and flowing through us. It's a huge leap to begin to get this, and I think the more we blend with these natural cycles, kind of get ourselves close to the earth, we get really connected to that flow. So Cami, go ahead and give us some of those zingers that have been happening this week with all this energy moving.
Okay, so I'll talk about a few of the huge news things that just went right over the mainstream media's head, and even within the lightworker community didn't stick, because everybody's just so they're just so getting blasted right now that they're having a hard time focusing. But I caught some really major things that went on this week.
So we have to say that events I literally say in 21st Century Superhuman, we're literally being pushed into an evolutionary leap by these movements in the cosmos. So the events that you're going to share are literally like a pressure of the system kind of equalizing itself, and change has got to happen when this kind of energy is moving.
Right. And
did you have a thought, Daniel? No? Okay.
I mean, basically, with all of these changes, we have to adapt to it. So rather than having these experiences, we might have upheavals in our life. People might be getting upset with us. We'll have trouble handling things when normally we can handle them fine. I personally, through all of this stuff, have kind of had some panic attacks, but one of the things I've learned as a self-mastery practitioner is all of this is inputs. And so rather than reacting or getting upset or having a negative impact or negative reaction, you take it as a signal and you just watch it. So I've been observing this, and with the panic attacks I just watch it. I go along with my own, whatever I'm doing. and I just watch it, and it just usually subsides. And I mean, basically all I can say about all this stuff is adapt with it. Don't take anything personally. Take time to take care of yourself, because we are in some crazy times.
Yeah. And all the little things you do with your diet and getting out in nature and getting out in the sun and watching your thoughts. Like Daniel said, don't react right away when you're having anxiety or you're, you know, it's real easy to perceive something incorrectly right now because our shadows are sort of coming to the surface. That's what the Uranus Pluto thing does. It shines the light on the shadows. So if you have, like Cary likes to say, corrupt data on your lens or spitwads on your lens, they're going to become really, really clear for everybody else to see. And so having the awareness comes with, you know, keeping yourself balanced and in the flow. And also just when you feel like reacting, it's a really good time to stop and pause and say, what is going on inside of me that's causing me to get so upsheveled or disheveled?
I would say we're in the cosmic ringer washing machine right now, and you know and stuff's getting stirred up, and it's really just such that reconnecting with nature. I mean, every day this week I've just gone, man, I've got to get away from the computer, out of the house. I got to go get on the bike and go ride, or go to the beach, or go somewhere where I can just immerse myself in the flow of harmonizing with nature.
Yeah, the EMF bombardment is strong right now. You don't need any additional help with your computers and your devices and stuff throwing you out of balance. So yeah, I've been avoiding any electronics big time this week in order to keep myself in this, level-headed. I'm just sitting back and watching stuff and laughing while other people are, chewing their nails off. So Uranus is all about rebellion and revolution, revolting on an individual and collective level, globally and individually. And Pluto is, they call it the little planet of big changes. It's a transformative force. So when you get the two together, you tend to have, the cabal has been in a huge revolt this week. So Putin disappeared, came back, his number one bodyguard was dead. So he apparently survived some sort of attempt on his life. While all that was going on, they were planting stories of a coup in Russia. They were killing off pro-Eastern Alliance politicians in the Ukraine by the half a dozen or more. And there was a big fight going on in the background. And also the number one spokesperson for the resistance movement, who hasn't released this publicly, so I'm not going to really talk about it a whole lot, got attacked at the same time. So for them to go after two key players in the resistance movement and then the shift shapers on the planet like that at the same time, I mean, they're obviously getting really desperate. And luckily they didn't succeed. And like all things like this, it just goes to fuel the light communities more. Every time you have a temper tantrum, all that does is get other people clear on things. The contrast is really good fuel for clarity. So,
again, the breakdown that we see we literally see breakdown of old systems going on. Obviously, it's the chaos that comes when this kind of change is afoot.
Big time. I mean, the last week or so that I was telling India last night, the G20 that started a few years ago before all these square dances started happening is now down to a G2. As of last week, the UK has even jumped ship. So now that just leaves Tokyo stock market and the New York Stock Exchange in the old banking system.
And when you say G20 or G2, can you explain?
Well, those are the cabal alliances around the planet with these countries. They were, and it's comical that these countries are going to say they're allied because obviously they're all looking out for their best interests, but it turns out their best interest was all a common goal because they're all being run by thugs. So the G20, dropped down into the G10 and the G8 and then the G5, and now they're literally it's just Japan and the US that are left. Everyone else has switched over to the Eastern Alliance and are getting ready to launch this new banking system. And Tokyo is reportedly on the verge of switching over too, which will leave literally no one standing in and saluting to the IMF, the World Bank, the central banking system that's been controlling the slave planet for a while now. So this
right. And when we talk about these things, it's not really something to fear, but it's something to look at as
it's
ultimately positive change. And we all believe that it is going to happen more easily than anyone has imagined. That some people may never know it happened.
Well, they will eventually, but it'll probably be after it's all said and done with. And that's what I find so funny about what's going on right now is like the light worker community has been pushing for this for so long, for so many years, since 2012. We thought it was going to happen in 2012 and then 2013 and 14. And now that it's happening, like it's literally, there's nothing between us and the shift right now. Now that it's happening, it's like so anticlimactic. Nobody's even talking about it. And I think it's kind of hilarious because it is happening so subtly. It's been happening so subtly that people finally got off that instant gratification, place where they just wanted the shift to happen in the blink of an eye. They've gotten out of that space and sort of just started focusing on what little they can do in their resources and in their tribe to make the shift happen. And in the process of doing that internal shift, the external shift is going down without them even blinking an eye. So
right. And this is a big ship to steer, planet Earth with 7 billion people on it, and systems and countries and governments. But the easy way to look at this and talk about it is just that common thought that's been brought about in the last few years that 1% have been running the world. And it's about moving that 1% corporate interest that's been kind of taking advantage of people and the planet and just sucking energy basically, and shifting the balance so that it is spread out among everyone. And I literally have heard some clips of Kennedy lately that I remember hearing as a child, but I didn't have the awareness as a child, where he was saying there are evil people running the world. We need to change this.
He was in the process of shifting the central banking system when they killed him. So, and
I believe Lincoln actually was doing the same thing. So a lot of history.
There's a lot of evidence to support. And also Reagan made it a little attempt before they tried to kill him too. And then that's all it took to scare the shit out of him. And he kind of went to the dark side as well. And I think maybe Obama also started with good intentions, but he sold out at some point. It's pretty clear.
So let's go ahead and hit a few more high points from this week.
So none of it is bad, like you said. It actually is really good news. It's what we need to happen in order to create this golden age we're always talking about. Since can happen, we're just sort of in a holding pattern. And so all this movement, even though it appears to be negative, is actually really, really positive. And then there was something that doesn't even appear to be negative that happened. It's just straight 1000% positive that I haven't heard anybody talking about. And it's crazy because this is like the biggest thing we've been waiting for this whole time since 2000, really, since Nasara, since all the plan got thwarted by these, events that the cabal set into motion. The Pope announced on Fox News, no less, in South America, so Fox News Latino, that this would be a year of mercy. And what I find really interesting about his language was he's talking about the people needing to exercise forgiveness this year with the things that are going to unfold. He wasn't, talking about having mercy on the people. He was talking about having mercy on the people that we're about to expose, or that are about to get exposed in a really global, massive kind of way, because that's another reason it's been going so slow. Until we get our consciousness into a place where we can handle the truth, it would create pure chaos if you just rip the rug out from under people and let them know. And they've been controlled by.
All creation is initiated with thought, and as we say regularly, we're now getting really in the millions around the planet that are recognizing how critical it is that we hold higher frequency thought, that we focus in love, that we
being flexible and courageous and self-empowered, and all of these things are really important right now when you're dealing with these energies, because there's going to be some ugly truths come to the surface, and having yourself grounded and in a big picture perspective is going to be really, really important. So the Pope seems to be setting that up, calling this the Year of Mercy, asking for forgiveness, people to exercise forgiveness. And that was actually the interesting thing, that the resistance movement spokesperson is the only thing that was mentioned about what happened to him and his girlfriend was a post on forgiveness. And I thought that was really telling of where we're headed. And so then he announced at the end of this Year of Mercy, there will be a global jubilee debt, a debt reset for the whole entire planet. Actually got quoted saying this on a mainstream South American.
That is amazing.
And he named the date too. It was like December 8th or something like that. Wow. Which there's another Pluto-Uranus dance around that time from, like, I think November to January. It comes within a degree of each other again before they finally start separating over the next. Wow. It's like 10 years it takes for it to get that close because they move so slow. And then 10 years after, as they move apart, you'll be seeing a lot of upheavals and shifts in consciousness and just big changes going on the planet. So
and let me throw out, too, this is also the conjunction that was happening in the 60s, and it has to do with both personal freedom and it has to do with planetary governmental freedom.
And, social, internal and external social revolution.
One of the things that I've been bumping into a lot lately is people who are dropping out of the system. They're dropping out of traditional jobs. They're looking for a path to freedom. They're coalescing with community. And it's almost like somebody's shaking the sieve,
It is.
And anybody who isn't too attached to the security of the old way is kind of dropping out and starting to look for new ways to live. And we're just in such an amazing time with that. And it's a challenge that tests us to our core. And as Daniel was saying, it's like remembering to just observe and to stay centered and rather than getting stressed about feeling these changes coming in our lives. I see more and more people moving into their hearts.
Yes.
Choosing the heart over everything.
Well, because it's getting more and more uncomfortable to stay in that status quo and that old way of being and doing, because as the planet gets enlightened and raises their consciousness, you can't get away with lying to yourself, lying to others about your motivations and your manipulations. Like, you reap what you sow at a speed never seen before. So the feedback, we've talked about this a lot, the feedback is getting so instantaneous at this point. I mean, you can destroy something that you spent a long time built in the drop of a hat, because as the population gets more self-aware and self-empowered and they're not willing to sell themselves out or do things just because of an opportunity, these people at the top of the pyramid structure, which we also talked about last night, we're moving into a circular structure. It's no longer going to be a hierarchy where there's one dictator at the top or master and commander at the top telling the rest what to do. It's a circle where we all make decisions together. And, in the transition of people moving into their right-mindedness, we might need a few people at the head of that circle making the final decisions if the entire group can't figure out a way that serves all with all the resources and time and energy they have. But the future is going to look like no governments, no leadership, none of that stuff. We will be our own sovereign beings. And
that is a really big leap of change. We're all kind of practicing that in our daily lives. Like,
and as we start learning. As we start feeling our sovereignty, we're going to stop wanting to answer to these corporations. We're going to stop wanting to answer to people that are trying to control us in our lives. And, so it's just time to, clear out your shadows and get on board, because it's not going to go back to the way it used to be. If you're trying to function in the old paradigm system, you're just going to keep experiencing this kind of contrast in a more magnified way.
So any other key things that have happened?
I mean, there's a bunch of stuff, but that was, I'd say,
major.
That was huge. And so, definitely glad we got to talk about them.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and jump into growing things in this fertile environment that we're living to be, to be generative. Are you going to stay with us or?
No, I'm going to jet out.
Okay.
Love you guys.
Thank you so much, Cami, for being with us and sharing your vision and your wisdom.
I will definitely catch this on the replay, though, because I was a big aquaponics gardening person years ago, and so I'm going to love to hear the progress that's been made in the growing of consciousness, the consciousness of growing, I should say, that's going on right now.
The growing of consciousness or the consciousness?
Yeah, same thing.
All right.
Love you guys.
All right. Love you
Bye.
too. Bye. So Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we start? Do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and how you became this amazing dreadlocked spirit being that we just absolutely love? Ken and I have both come and stayed with you in Indiana, where you're part of the Evolved Ministry kind of core team. And Evolved Ministry is an online energy school that we're all part of. 21st Century Superhuman is in the curriculum. And you and Ken are both, instructors and numerous other miscellaneous tasks that have to do with keeping, a fledgling energy school going online. And so it's been really, really cool to spend time with you in your space. And there's a really wonderful kind of, I think, tribal bond between all of us. And but go ahead and share some of your background that got you to where you are today as this sort of wizard of growing and playing with nature.
All right.
Wizard of growing. Yeah, well, she's been in some of your gardens. That's why she says that.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
There's little urban gardens in the campus area were just like so magnificent.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mystical, magical.
It was great to have you guys here and to show you that, because that basically is my world. And so to give you a little introduction about me, I kind of been growing food my whole life. I grew up in Indianapolis, and we had a little vegetable garden of tomatoes and peppers and strawberries and mint and a couple other things. And so I've always kind of been around a garden. But when I got into high school, I got into music and got into just high school things. And I didn't really get back to, I guess, my roots, I should say, of growing food until college. I went to IU to do music recording and music business, didn't get into the program, didn't understand the business school. So I had to choose something else. And I had an experience that basically opened me up to this whole other world, which was of plants, of nature, of the beauty that is naturally around us. And that's basically created perfectly as it is. And so I took a course called Permaculture my sophomore year, maybe my junior year, and that really opened me up to the whole spectrum of growing food, of foraging. I'm also a big mushroom and wild edible forager.
When you say IU, that was Indiana University, right? You're
yes,
kind of in that
university. Yeah. So,
right, yeah.
Yep. I currently live in Bloomington. I've been here for 12 years. And so after I took this permaculture course, you see the whole world differently, because permaculture is basically a system of creating, I guess, your surroundings. It's typically, originally it was meant for larger kind of country settings, but now they do it in the city, where you bring biological processes into human settlements. And so you use gravity to water your gardens. You use the natural cyclical cycle of the seasons to understand weather patterns, or it has a lot to do with green building, basically providing everything you can with what you have, and providing it in a sustaining way. So permaculture is two words. It's basically like permanent and culture. And so we want to create a way of living that will sustain us long after I'm dead, long after you guys are dead. So
it's sort of a naturally self-perpetuating.
Yes.
System, right?
Yes. Exactly. And in the beginning, you might have some low inputs or high financial inputs, or low results and high financial inputs. But over time, the output is so big because you get it into a system where, like you said, it's automatic.
I know years ago I took I know Bill Mollison was the founder
Yes.
of permaculture, and he
Yes.
is he still on the planet?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I wonder.
I don't think so.
He was kind of older, I think, when I studied his stuff, and he lived in Tasmania, right? And which is such a cool place, which is kind of down there by Australia, New Zealand. And then I took a permaculture course with a couple of really cool guys. We did it at the farm in Tennessee, but and they ended up starting a community. I'm trying to remember their names, but that was really an eye opener for me. And already what you've explained has explained more than I had an idea of.
Yeah,
it's really cool because I never thought about, you know, the water systems and the gravity feed and all of that. So it's pretty complex science, really.
Yeah, I mean,
it's really us reintegrating with how nature's supposed to operate anyway, right? So it doesn't. It wouldn't be complex if we hadn't grown so far away from it.
Yeah, I mean, we use the natural processes around us. So, for example, where I took permaculture here in Indiana, it's a couple that's been living for a while at this I don't know how to describe it, but anyway, they've been there for a while. They've had the course there for a while, and we were there learning. And so we would implement things. So if you want to have, for example, water flow, so your garden gets watered, or you want to be able to catch the water that's naturally running off your yard or the watershed around you, you build swales, it goes with the contour of the land. And so the water will naturally get caught there and flow down the contour into a basin or some kind of like man-made pond, which then you can grow, you know, wildflowers or wild grasses, but you could do water chestnuts, you can do other tubers like cattails, and so you provide food with this natural system. So, and then, I mean, there's ways to do it. I'm not too knowledgeable about this, but there's ways to actually clean the water as well so you can drink it or use it in some kind of way.
I forgot to mention, Paul was supposed to be with us today on effective microorganisms, and he broke a tooth, so he's not here. But he would have some really interesting input on the cleaning of the water.
Yeah.
But you've got so many details in your mind. Let's kind of circle back around and how did you grow your dreads? Because I just think that's such a cool part of you.
Yeah. Well, when I was in high school, I liked the hippies because they cared about everything else. They weren't selfish. They cared about the environment. They did human rights stuff. And so I always wanted dreads, and I'd gotten into Bob Marley and reggae music in high school as well. So that was an influence of one love and unity, and just togetherness. And so I think it was freshman year, I tried to dread my hair and it didn't work. And then sophomore year, I had some friends dread it. So it's not technically dreads when you have someone else do it because it's not natural, but they started to grow. And so basically ever since 2003, I've had dreads. This is my third set. But most of what I have, like I play with my hair all the time. It's just kind of a natural process. I'm sure anyone, if they let their hair go without combing it and washing it all the time, their hair would dread. So to me, this is my natural style because when I've cut my hair, it will naturally come back. Within a couple of weeks, it will start to dread if I don't comb it.
That's really good. I started living without, I've been over a year without shampoo or conditioner or putting any kind of chemically soap things on my body. And I think that whole, they talk about the Native American, the trackers or the code talkers in World War II were kind of psychic. And then when they cut their hair all short, it went away. And I think these elements that kind of bring out the magic of who we are physically in relationship to nature It's really sweet when you start experimenting with it. And then Ken has his like short hair, so.
I used to have long hair back in the day.
Yeah, that's what you told me.
Yeah, I had like a mohawk. I was more of a punk rocker, so it was all shaved and mohawked, and it was about this long. But
that's cool. Yeah, I've had long hair a lot of my life.
But you have an energy about you, Daniel. I think that just comes from your interchange with the natural world, and it's really beautiful.
Probably. I mean, I've spent a lot of my life outside, especially when I was in college. I mean, here in Bloomington, it's like a mecca of natural resources. We have Lake Monroe. We have 3 main lakes. We have all kinds of parks. We have limestone bedrock, so like it's kind of a crystalline area. Around the rocks or around the lakes, we have geodes and other crystal forming,
which we have picked up many
rocks.
Of, right, Ken?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Hold on here. I'll show you a geode.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just being here, like, I don't know, nature is one of those things that I've always been drawn to, and eventually I will live off grid, and eventually I will be self-sustaining. But there's nothing like being outside, being barefoot in the woods when it's raining is the greatest experience I've ever had. Because you want to talk about a connection. There's a connection.
Oh yeah. Barefoot.
Go ahead, Ken.
Barefoot doing storm work.
Yes.
Yeah. Nice.
That's the inside of the geode, and this one, as you can see.
Is that the one that's as big as your head?
No,
not quite.
It's close. This is like grapefruit size.
Yeah.
But this was found in Lake Monroe, I believe.
Yep. Right by Daniel when we were out there hanging up there hanging out. Beautiful. Thanks, Ken. Very cool.
Yep.
So you guys have a pretty long growing season there, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you know what you are in the or
we are, I believe I was actually looking this up. Hold on a sec.
You know what? I was out in Colorado for years, and I think we were like zone 3 or something. I mean, I grew up in Michigan where you could grow, you had like June through, or actually you had May through October in Michigan.
It's like the first week in May kind of, and then you have until like September, October, and then it's all
right. But then I went to Colorado and I was up at 7,000 feet and 9,000 feet, and your last frost would be at the end of June, and your first frost would be like the last week of August. You had about 3 months you could actually grow things. So greenhouses were really popular out there because but go ahead.
Well, here we have farmers market all year round.
Wow.
And so the summer farmers market goes from, I believe, April until November, and then December there's a break, and then it starts up in January. But the growing season, the growing season typically is you plant April 1st and you set things to bed around October, sometimes November, because we'll get snow in October. Yeah, that's real long. But with the weather changes that we've had, sometimes we've had 90 degrees in April, so the cool crops don't do too well. We have, 4-month drought. So it's kind of interesting living in Indiana because you never know what the weather's going to be. But we had a pretty, I would say normal, it was pretty cold winter, so we should have a pretty normal, not too hot summer, but it's basically April to October.
And do you think we're having to get used to some kind of unusual weather patterns as far as cold, warm, dry?
Definitely. I think like we had 3 mild winters, I believe, and 4 hot summers. And now, like this winter was pretty harsh. And then the winter before that, we had negative 35 and feet of snow, which I don't remember having. I'm 31 years old, and I know we've had some of that in my lifetime, but since I've been in Bloomington, I haven't seen that at all. So I know the weather patterns are changing, and as we get our earthquakes and the polar north shifts, that will also change a lot of the weather patterns, as well as glaciers melting.
Right.
And heating
We have
up.
a lot of that going on right now.
Right.
Without getting too into that in depth.
Yeah, and I personally think that things will get worse. I hope they don't, but as things shift and the vibration rises, it will just cause a little bit more chaos. But there needs to be some kind of a cleansing, some kind of like, I can't think of the right word, but there's a shift happening. So
Ken, you had a really intense winter this year, didn't you?
Yeah, Michigan was crazy. It was really intense.
I mean, I've seen pictures of ice caves and frozen Lake Michigan, and
oh yeah, I spent a bunch of time out on the actual big lake because it was frozen so solid for so far out.
Nice.
Now, does it usually not do that?
Yeah, it usually doesn't freeze out. I mean, you'll be able to get into like the Bergs area, but there was just so much more ice and snow and the wind, and it did weird formations this year, and we got a lot of snow. But yeah, these weather shifts are kind of different. It makes us kind of have to look for different ways to even do gardening.
Yeah.
You know, and like we had talked about urban gardening, or where you can start turning gardening more indoors, or where you're not actually having an issue to where you're using water or having to use like a natural resource, like, you know, out in California where they don't have a lot of water, or areas where you need to recycle. And
right.
So that's why I like the aspect of doing, you know, aquaponics or stuff with fish or stuff with hydro, because you can just cycle it around and move it and clean it and allow you to up inside. And especially as these weather changes come into line to where your season might get different or something might change, we need to start looking into different ways to say, how can I do stuff inside a little bit?
Go ahead, Daniel.
I was just going to say, and along with aquaponics, that is something I haven't gotten quite into, but I definitely want to learn about it.
Yes.
But very cool. I was going to say that there's a lot of people out there creating like window gardens that are self-watering. Or there's kind of automatic, like using gravity fed to catch the water off your roof into big cisterns or big containers, so your water catchment systems. And so there's ways that you can do that. I would say definitely here in Indiana, because we do get a lot of the seasonal rains. Out in California, not at all. Right. I actually read an article recently that they might have 1 year left of water because their aquifers are now all messed up from the fracking.
Yeah, so I think, you know, what you're talking about, how can people integrate growing food right into their everyday life?
Yeah,
and for instance, when I was living in Colorado, like back in the 1920s, all of the water rights from Colorado had been sold downstream. We fed 10 states water from the Rocky Mountain passes right near where I live, you know, all the way to the West Coast, all the way down to Arizona, Texas and Mexico. And really, literally, the Rio Grande and the Colorado rivers are running out of water at the end because so much water is being taken from them. And during the time I was in Colorado, there actually was a law that you couldn't do water catchment in Colorado because that water had already been sold downstream to these other states years ago. So during the time I lived there, some of that law started changing. And I know one lady's just been shut down in Florida recently for doing this off the grid house.
Yeah, I saw that.
In a neighborhood or something. So it's important to ask, you know, to decide, are you living somewhere? What's adaptable to where you're living? Are you living in like a more of a, you know, a community where there's restrictions, or do you need to move to the country? I mean, I've had some really good friends out in Colorado. About 50 families got together and went and bought 300 acres, and they all still had jobs. They built a cluster of houses at the center, and a lot of them were like light straw clay, cob, or straw bale. Beautiful, ended up being a beautiful place, and they had a big area for gardens. And they just made the choice to move out of the town and into a place where they could grow most of their food. And it was out there I saw for the first time, because in Colorado, as I said, because of the short growing season, we had to have greenhouses. And I had a friend who had a company called Grow Domes. And so they're like these dome greenhouses. But one of the neatest things I saw that was, I think you'd go back to passive permaculture type of stuff, was where they had dug to make a greenhouse. They had dug like a ditch in the ground that was about 3 feet. It came about up to my waist, I think. So maybe about 3.5 feet deep, maybe about 4 feet wide. And then then the earth, the regular level of the earth was the shelves. And then they built this, they just used plastic tubing and sheets of plastic and some of that foam spray stuff.
Yep.
I mean, I was in there in the middle of the winter and it was 70 degrees. And all of that to grow their plants.
What are those called? I'm trying to think. The name of it right on the edge. It's actually an old process, but it's
got to be ancient.
Oh, yeah, it's an ancient thing, and it works really, really well for northern climates. I mean, like you said, it's 70 degrees in there in the middle of the winter.
Because I've also lived in an underground house, and an earthship or an underground house, they tend to be naturally 55 to 60 degrees all year round, and especially if you put solar gain, they're even more than that. So, what kind of adaptations can we make in our homes, in the world we're in the type of growing environment that we're in, to begin integrating growing food in our everyday lives? And I kind of want to get more into this in depth because I think people are hungry for this, and it's something that's going to be vital in our moving ahead into a new kind of culture as well.
Yeah, well,
I don't think there's any reason why people can't start realizing the concept. I mean, it's hard because we go out to the store, we want to buy our own stuff, but to think that we could actually, set up a little front yard garden or a little share space and grow some stuff outside, or do something indoor and have a little self-contained kit where you can grow a few veggies or some herbs or some lettuce, just to start. I know there's things out there that people can get into, but they just need to become aware of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, did you come up with a name for that, Daniel?
I was looking it up, and the only thing I saw was underground greenhouse.
Yeah.
But I definitely know what you're talking about, and I would love to experiment with something like that.
Right. I mean, one of the things we're going to have to move into, we talk about moving away from fossil fuels. We talk about, free energy coming, and but maybe not having. I mean, it's really insane. Who are the people that wrote the book about living for a year on just food that they could get locally? And that was this whole family did the process, and that was a huge experiment that actually they learned so much from. And how can we live on mostly what's grown locally and doesn't have to be shipped to us from 2,000 miles away or whatever? And I think this is it's a huge need for us even to move forward as an intelligent culture.
Well, that would completely shift the whole idea. I mean, how much money you would generate for local business if you just shopped local and didn't go to corporations, how much more you would empower the local community, and especially once you can get together to say, okay, especially the area that I live, we have a lot of area that's like urban and it's kind of downtown, and there's a lot of empty houses and stuff, and we want to try to open up those places to grow food and to grow food indoors. So think of areas around where you could start sharing these types of ideas and where we can grow food for people. I mean, there's these guys in Chicago right now that are building like a 15,000 square foot aquaponics facility where they're going to grow perch in that, and then they're going to grow greens, and they're going to feed like thousands and thousands of people. So, I mean, right there, if a few people just got behind it, like Daniel said, in the short term, it costs a little bit to get it going and to buy everything and the labor to get it all built. But once that thing is up and running, once you have it actually moving down the track, it's endless. Like, especially that you have something that's self-sufficient and it's just on like a sea of green. It's just running.
Yeah. Those projects are actually happening all over the country. There's a couple Facebook pages that I'm not going to look up right now, but I want to say it's the Urban Garden Guys.
Yeah, and I know Food is Free is another one. And
that is a good one too. And so they are doing all kinds of stuff. They've been around for a little while. There's also Will Allen, who they all take abandoned city lots, or some of them take abandoned city lots and start gardens, park type things. But and that's definitely one of the ways that we can start providing food in our own cities. The other thing is, their city ordinances about trees and shrubs and plants to where it can't be an edible plant. There's an intentional community in Davis, California, where it's not completely off grid, but it's a neighborhood where basically all the cars are on the outside. There's community space on the inside, garden space, like all the front doors face each other, and it's just garden space. There's apple trees.
Call that kind of a permaculture concept. That's a permaculture concept.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, intentional communities a lot of the time have either biodynamics, which I don't know too much about, or biodynamic farming, and then also permaculture, because a lot of them are, they're greener houses. They have solar panels. They have water catchment systems. I mean, they're a small, tight-knit community. They all serve a purpose. They're basically like a luxury eco-village type of thing.
And that was built quite a while ago, that Davis.
Yeah, I learned about it in college like 15 years ago.
The book is Animal Vegetable Miracles by Barbara Kingslover. I love that book. I mean, it's by a woman, so it's a little bit from the woman's side of view, but the whole family lived on only locally grown food for a year and learned a huge amount. And I think they've gone on to other things related to that at this point. But yeah, Daniel, what would you say your passion is?
Passion?
Well, I know you.
What do you mean, like as?
Well, let's talk about.
Okay, I have two.
Yeah, I mean, as far as growing goes.
Okay, because I have two passions. One is growing food and everything about food and local, and the other one is self-mastery. But to get back to the food, which actually gardening, I guess, is my self-mastery. But my passion, God, that's hard. Well, one of the things that I really liked when I was learning about permaculture and some of the courses I took and the experience that I got working on farms and doing, I started a student garden on campus here at IU.
Yeah, tell us about that a little bit, because that was really, and how you did that. Because I think that's kind of it's helped you sort of express and develop your concepts of gardening, hasn't it? Yeah,
exactly. And that was started from the permaculture class. So that was built upon permaculture principles. We had a little bit of issues because it's IU and we have to fit with their policies or whatever. But basically in 2006, I believe it is. Yeah, 2006, me and 3 other students started the student garden and student group called Sprouts, which is students producing organics under the sun. And we started that because we wanted to provide food for Colin's dorm, so we could have a full circle situation where we grow food for them, they serve it in the cafeteria, we compost the food waste. Didn't quite really happen because there's a lot of health and safety and insurance and other kind of bureaucratic things. But the Sprouts Garden has been there. It's been a part of IU for 9 years. This year, they unfortunately destroyed it and are moving it to a much better location because they had a building thing. But
yeah, I actually never heard. I was there during the destruction phase, or the coming destruction.
Yeah.
Never heard that it got reborn. So
yeah, I mean the organizers of the garden right now are incredible.
Nice.
I'm super proud of the work they're doing. They've built a lot more coalitions and group, like it's Sprouts, but there's a large food literacy group, I guess. I don't really know what to call it, at IU. So food is important. And so growing food is even more important. Local food is even more important. I'm hoping that it isn't just a fad and it's a PR stunt, that IU actually goes towards more sustainable food production and food, policy, I guess. But that, in my opinion, that will be the students taking that in charge, working with some of the professors and faculty that are into that. Because I really do think this is the way universities need to go as well, not only cities, but universities, because they provide so much education and they use so many resources that if we could turn universities from being consumptive to producers, that would be huge, because so much of our food is trucked across the country or flown across the globe, that if we provide as much as we can here, we can not only cut down our cost, provide better nutrients, provide better community development, education. Like there's so many positives to it.
Absolutely. You know, and I think commonly we think gardening has to be out in the country, and yet we come up to, I said,
and hard work.
And hard work, yeah.
It's not always that hard.
See, isn't that sweet? I mean, I think that's something we need to talk about. How is it not that hard? Because, and you know, and I think thinking about growing right where we are, it doesn't matter. We don't have to pack up and move to the country to do it. But how do we, you know, how do we do it without it? And I think permaculture is one of the great tools where you're layering in the soil and all of that. I mean, composting and Ruth Stout.
I mean, we can do it very easily in the city. I live in an apartment complex right now where I cannot have a garden, but luckily I know people in town, since the Sprouts Garden was my main place of growing food. I have 3 different places that I'll be growing food this next season, perhaps more, but those are more community, like friends' backyards that have a lot of space. So there'll be multiple people growing.
So you're doing collaborative gardening, right?
Yes, exactly.
Now, how nice is that?
I mean, I grow so much food at the Sprouts Garden that I canned the majority of it, but some food went bad or I gave it away. So this collaborative growing, we can feed more people. We can all have hands in it, because you asked me what my passion is in gardening. My passion is planting a seed and watching it grow throughout the season to where one tomato seed can provide pounds and pounds of beautiful, delicious tomatoes. Or like you saw the sunflowers. Like sunflowers are one of my favorite seeds, not only for their beauty, they can get 12, 15 feet tall, but they provide habitat and food for other insects, other birds, other animals. So the garden is my passion, because it's not just a place of food. It's an ecosystem. It's my sanctuary. It's a sanctuary for everything that's there, even the mice that might be living, or the rabbits that might be living in the garden.
Yes, I love that.
So much. It's diverse.
So instead of trying to keep all the critters out, you had a really interactive experience with the critters, right?
And there was those little bunnies that lived in the. Remember that?
Yeah, we had 3 families, which
round.
Yeah, which that to some degree became a problem, but we saw what they liked, and then we planted accordingly.
How cool is that? You know?
Yeah.
I like to not have to kill things in order to grow things, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you can
just relocate. I used to always relocate in my gardens, especially when I moved to Grand Rapids. It was a big city, and the first thing I did was get a mini little bobcat and just destroyed the backyard and tilled it up and put in a garden and had this crazy garden. And I ended up, I think it was like 30 some squirrels I ended up trapping, and like little chipmunks and a raccoon, like, because they were just getting and digging, but I didn't kill them. I just relocated them to a park.
That's good.
And the other idea is, go ahead. How do you say gardens?
I wanted to bring this back to the original point that we had started on growing in the city or growing in your town or wherever you live. Collaborative gardens, like we just talked about, but also like you can look online and there's I think it's called window gardens. There's a thing here in Bloomington where it's like a 55-gallon drum that they basically created this. I don't know how they did it, but created this way where you can grow like 50 different plants in this 55-gallon and worm castings in the middle. So you don't have to plan a garden outside. You can grow it right there. And usually things like that aren't going to be against like apartment policies because it can look nice. Like I can have potted plants out on my porch.
Yeah. There's a lot of innovative things happening. I mean, I've even seen pictures where people take an old pallet and lay it in a garden. Then you don't have to weed, and you put the seeds in between where the slats and the boards are, and you have this really neat looking little garden space. I mean, and I think collaborative gardening is, and now we're seeing pictures of like these buildings. I just saw a picture of a building in Italy where they've got,
I saw that.
Every single, I don't know, corner of the building has plants growing out of it. So you're actually living in a food producing like system.
Yeah. And that's what we need to move towards because, I mean, there's been some stuff in the news about Monsanto being sued and McDonald's and all of that, like going south, which I mean, I don't know what kind of effect that would have because, I mean, Monsanto is in charge of a lot of the food industry.
Monsanto needs to be repurposed. That's what we talk about a lot. Just repurpose.
Yeah.
Already out in the system. Let's just repurpose it to be organic and healthy.
Yeah. And I mean, I know I've watched a lot of videos on how people are growing in the city, and some of them actually produce for Cisco, which is another one of those big food companies.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is if we can get a lot more people growing in towns, even just backyard gardens where you share food, it'll encourage other people.
Yes.
One of the things that I did to graduate college was I wrote a book on how to grow through the alleys of sprouts. And so that was something that I have available, but also like that's something that the sprouts people can look at and take with them. So the legacy that I have left behind, they can use that and they can see how we grew it. And it's pretty technical because I worked on a farm at the time to help me write the book, but I also learned a crazy amount of information that I would have never learned if I hadn't worked on farms, or one farm in particular. And
Daniel, where is your, I put together a blog post that will be at CCN because your link was a little bit long to get the book. Yeah. So if people can look for the blog post at CCN, that's the same title to this show.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I wanted to just show you the book.
Yes.
Called Gardening with Sprouts. It's looking opposite to me.
No, we can see it. We can see it right.
So that's the book. I self-published it to graduate college. I have through Evolve Ministry, I'll mention this, I'm going to be teaching a gardening course that I'll be releasing within the next couple of weeks, definitely in April, so people can get a good start on growing. But I will be revising that book at some point, either this spring or this summer, because it is old. I've learned crazy amounts since it was published in 2008. But, I mean, I started growing food by taking a class and buying books. Like my library of gardening books at one point was probably like 30 or 40 books.
So where will your course be available, Daniel?
Oh, it'll be available through Evolve Ministry University.
EvolveMinistry.com and then the university part of it.
Yeah,
and I also have the link to that in the information on your bio at the CCN blog post.
Okay,
so.
And you do have to sign up to take it. It is a university. We teach a lot of stuff. We have a forum as well that have endless resources. Definitely worth it. But if you want to learn to grow food, you can buy my book, but also like go into your community. That's what I did. I was in college, luckily, so I could take courses and I had a wealth of resources available. But we live in the information age. Just get on Google, type. You live in, where do you live, Ken? Where do you guys live? What's the cities?
He's in Michigan. I'm in Florida.
Oh, yeah, you're in Florida. Okay, so look for your town or a local town for resources. Go to your library. I mean, we have so many resources available to us all around. I mean, I wouldn't have learned what I learned if I didn't, one, if I didn't have the willpower, but two, if I didn't look out. Like,
Right.
if you learn something, don't wait for someone to come. Go out and do it. Like, you have to make it happen. You have to look for the resources. It might be difficult, but I mean, YouTube has amazing resources.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know what?
Every city.
Go ahead, Ken.
I said every city has something, even the farmer's market, just get out and talk to people, and
Yes.
you can even find a communal garden in your area.
Yes.
Or exactly. Try to get talking with some people and trying to start one. I'm looking to try to start a few with some people here in town. So you can just try to get something going in your area. And even if, like Daniel's doing, where you just, do garden shares, or you're sharing garden space. And so everyone can kind of take on a little bit of the responsibility.
There's a group in Portland that have people, they just say, put a sign up in your yard that says, I want a garden. And then this group of people are going around growing gardens in all these people's yards. And you can make income doing it too. I mean, you guys have a free store in Bloomington. I thought that was really cool, that had fresh produce in it. Right, Daniel? You took us there.
Oh, yeah. It's a food pantry.
Yeah, that was awesome.
They have 4 or 5 community gardens that they grow for the pantry. So people who can't afford, healthy vegetables and fruit because they're more expensive in the grocery store, they can get homegrown, picked, usually that day or the day before, nutritious food grown in their own community. And a lot of people that I've talked to at the food pantry actually do grow a lot of their food.
Right.
But when you have a family of 3, a family of 4, you have to have a lot of space to grow that much food.
I also saw I posted on Facebook the other day, reposted a place outside of LA. The family owns 1/10 of an acre. They grow 6,000 pounds of produce in a year, and they make $20,000.
Yep.
I mean, it isn't like we're going to grow food to make money, but we can grow food to make money. Ken, you could start that program in Muskegon where you have people put up the signage and look up that program in Portland. Let people put up signs in their yard and go around and just start growing gardens, and then sharing some of the produce, selling some of it. The people whose yard it's in get some of the produce, and you could actually create a whole income for yourself. Probably, that. Deliver to restaurants, deliver to health food stores, farmers market.
Basically, we need to. I mean, it's happening already, obviously, but in order to have the food security that we're talking about, or that we may actually need in the future, we need to start having gardens. We need to start gaining or relearning how to survive.
Yes.
Say if we lose power, or say, I'm not a doomsday person. There's infinite possibilities.
I think we have to be realistic, because we live with these big power grids, fossil fuels. I mean, we live in a system that could shut down, and our grocery stores could be empty in a week, and then what do you do? I know a lot of people who tell stories of being on the farm during the Great Depression. They never even knew the Depression happened, because they were trading with their neighbor. Somebody had a cow, somebody had chickens, somebody had eggs, somebody had milk, somebody had a garden, somebody had an orchard. And they never even knew that there was a depression. So, I mean, and I don't think any of us are doomsdayers, although we do know how fragile this system is. We do know that we are potentially going through both climate change, systems change, and probably, I think, one of the literally most sane plans for the entire planet is to start growing food locally, and then doing seed saving. How do we, I'd like to talk about that a little bit too, Daniel.
Definitely.
Good seeds, and how do we do seed saving? And
so,
I have one friend who will go, Bill Ballard, actually, who but he'll go just take whatever somebody gets at the grocery store and grow plants with it. But my understanding was that and he says things come out kind of weird, because a lot of the seed has been genetically modified to start with. But the whole, I think, seed saver exchange of good, non-animal engineered seeds
GMO.
probably really incredibly important at this time as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's been going on, I guess, as long as we've been domesticating food, which some say it's 10,000 years, but I'm pretty sure it's 12,000 years. But as long as
it isn't just evil that seeds be modified, because people that are growing are always looking for the better. What plant produces the best fruit or vegetable, and then you're going to take those seeds. I grew up in a Lebanese community in Michigan with grandparents and aunts and uncles from the old country, and we grew these Syrian cucumbers and the pale green zucchini squash and tomatoes. And I grew a garden, and we delivered it to people in the community the whole time I was growing up. And we always saved our seeds. We grew, we'd grow a big zucchini. Like you'd go, oh, that one kind of got too big, and that's a good one. So you'd let it grow and grow and grow and grow. And when the season was done, you'd pick it. It would turn yellow it would turn orange on the outside, and then you'd hack it open and you'd lay the seeds out to dry, and you'd save them for the next year. And that was how we grew our gardens. I mean, a lot of people don't even have any idea how to do that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, saving seed, there's kind of an art to it, especially because some seeds, if you don't...
there's also a big network too, right, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead and include that.
Okay.
I think there's really great people doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what network you're talking about, but there's a lot of, if you look online, there's a lot of heirloom seed companies. There's also, I think her name is Vandana Shiva.
Right, she's awesome.
She's kind of
she's like a guru.
She's like a pioneer in this food consciousness movement, but she has
Vandana Shiva.
That's it. She has a whole thing about seed saving, but the importance of it is the fact that
she's also in my book too.
Cool. We grow our own food, and why do we buy seed every single year? I mean, it's only like a couple dollars for a seed packet, and usually we don't use all of them. But
because we're supporting corporate industry, is that why?
Probably. But I mean, saving seed is super important, not only because we get to choose the strongest varieties or the strongest from the crop, but for me, I want to say a pride. It's not a pride. I'm not remembering words well today, but it's this feeling that, wow, I grew food and now I get to save the seed, and then I wait a whole other year. There's an anticipation to grow that next year. And I mean, there's every single food can be saved to some degree. Some things like squash and watermelons, and they can sometimes cross-pollinate. But
do you think it's better to start with a non-hybridized seed in order to save seeds, or does it matter?
Well, the way I look at seeds is most seeds these days are hybridized. It's not necessarily GMO, but they're hybridized. So how I've started to save seed was 10 years ago. With my first seeds, I saved seeds from a tomato, saved seeds from a cucumber, saved seeds from a pepper. And so then I used those the next year. And I mean, I've collected seeds over the years. But one thing I do want to mention is that when you save seed, you want to be careful because the germination rate year after year goes down. So I saved seed from last year. It has better germination rate, and it's all different depending on the vegetable or the fruit. But every year it'll go down. So if 9 out of 10 seeds this year germinated, maybe 7 out of 10 seeds next year germinate. So, and I mean, it's hard to plant every single thing that you get, but maybe one year you'll have a 3-pound Brandywine tomato that was delicious. You want to save seed from that because 3-pound Brandywine tomato is insane.
Sounds like you've done that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't really like pride myself in the amazing size of foods, but I pride myself in the way they taste, the way the garden operates. Because if you have good soil, you have healthier plants.
And that's what you notice when you start having good soil, that the food tastes better. It tastes kind of like cardboard at the grocery store. And then you go and start growing your own food and you're like, oh my God, food has never tasted so good.
Yeah. I was just going to share a story about that exact thing. At the Sprouts Garden, we used to, when the garden was there, we would have service learners or students that would get credit for working in the garden come out and help to get credit for the class and learn about, actually where food comes from, because most people go to the grocery store, but it actually takes one person planting the seed, growing it, or a lot of the food actually is machine grown or machine planted and that whole thing. But anyway, this girl spent like 2 hours in the garden and she was eating some of the cherry tomatoes. She came up to me and was like, why do they taste so good? And I was like, what do you mean? She was like, I've never had a tomato that tastes this good. And I was like, well, here at Sprouts, we grow it intentionally with our love, with our care. We have good soil. I mean, like all of the benefits of having an organic garden. And then years later, after she left and graduated, she came back, remembered me, found me, I think, at a restaurant and came up to me and told me that because of that experience, she has a garden. She wanted to grow food. And I was kind of get teary-eyed with this because you don't actually know the impact you have. Like I started a garden with 3 people because we wanted to teach people where food comes from. You don't actually know the impact until later. Like with Evolved Ministry and teaching self-mastery, you don't actually know the impact until you have students that say thank you, or have students that you see their lives changing because of it. And I'm not anyone special. I love growing food. So that's what I want to promote and that's what I want to teach. And I don't really care to get a thank you. I just want other people to do it. I want it to spread like wildfire.
But that is what's amazing. When we begin standing for what our passion is and we begin living for it in our lives and we begin living from the heart. I've had people come to me years later and say, I know I was giving you a hard time back then, but my life completely changed because of you,
Yeah.
And, those kind of stories like your story. And that's so heartwarming because they're the stories that come from us really living our passion. Ken, where are you is it cold right now still in Michigan or starting to warm up?
Yeah, it was about 43 today. So we don't get into any planting until about May.
Right. So you've got a couple months to go yet. So
yeah, I'm getting ready to start indoor stuff. I start my stuff inside.
Great.
Under grow lights and do everything by seed. So I'm getting ready to actually start my seed center here in about a week.
Nice. And what kind of seeds are you going to start?
Oh, all sorts. Tomatoes.
Tulsi, man.
Oh, yeah,
Tulsi.
Some of those herbs I brought you.
Yeah. So speaking of Tulsi, which is a really fantastic herb that we learned about from you, what I like to say about gardens is I like to see gardens be a mixture of herbs, vegetables, flowers. Instead of just like, I have to have these little rows of beans and tomatoes, the more I think you can mix things up. And I think your Sprouts garden, Daniel, was a beautiful example. And I've always grown my gardens that way, where you kind of have everything sort of somewhat mixed together. Maybe a certain area of something, but then it's also merging with another area. And you end up with this really, because that's how nature grows. It doesn't just grow one kind of crop.
There's one, you wanted to say something, Ken?
No, I was just going to say it all depends on your space, like, where you have, I'm going to be doing a lot of vertical growing this year because I have limited space, and I'm going to have 2 different locations for my own personal. I'm going to have to go vertical on a lot of stuff. So it all depends on what you have, and you have to kind of adjust on what you have for your area. I only have a 10 by 10 area, and I want to grow everything I can in that little 10 by 10 area. So it's like I got to grow my herbs and pots and grow this and grow my vertical and my pickles vertical, and you can do all sorts of things with trellising and training. You can train your plants to grow along a certain area. I learned a lot when I was younger living in Grand Rapids about roof growing. I did a lot of roof growing and like staircase growing, where we grew on like stairs on the side of like buildings, like fire escapes.
Nice. Yeah, I don't think any area is limited from growing. I think a bunch of students out in Oregon just planted a garden over a parking lot.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that. Well, I want to talk a little bit about like what kind of plants, Daniel, you think are fun to plant and good to plant in the spring, how you think comparing planting your own plants is to going out and buying those cute little plants you find in the hardware store and everywhere, and then how we enrich our soil. So maybe getting into some of those things. So people who are really wanting to get gardens going, and of course you look at your zone, where you are and when your last frost is, and how soon before last frost do you like to plant plants inside? Maybe 2 months or?
Well, it all depends. Some people start their tomatoes back in February.
Wow.
Because they just take a while to grow. I usually start mine you want to plant them April 1st. Some people plant April 1st.
April 1st is going to, that's depending on the zone, right?
Yeah. I don't really do anything like that, but sorry, I had a thought that I wanted to say that just popped back into my head.
Go for it.
Okay. Basically, what I learned in permaculture, outside of a lot of other things, is I forget it. The edge is where the action is. So where two ecosystems come together is where you'll have the highest amount of species.
Nice.
Animal interaction. Like it's amazing. And so in your garden, think about that. So planting in rows is good, but what if you plant in an S shape? You have curves. It's a little bit more, might be a little bit more difficult, but it adds a whole new element to the edge. And you can have fun with it, with colors or with different ways of trellising. But to get back to...
And that's really an element of permaculture, right? I remember Bill Mollison talking about we really should even have cities that are kind of like amoebas, and then gardening land that comes in and flows into the city, and then maybe your garden should be the same way. And the different plantings.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you went to the Sprouts garden, and we had some rows, we had little bed boxes, but we also had circles. We had things that kind of meandered. And it gives gardening, like, some people grow food, some people play music, they're amazing guitarists, some people paint or draw. Like, my art is growing food, and you can do so many things, because if you know the colors of what's going on, you can make the garden this visual, like,
kind of like a kaleidoscope or something.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for.
A work of art. I mean, really.
Yes. So, but I wanted to get to your question. So things that to grow right now, depending on your growing zone. When we grow here in Indiana, we start with, or at least I start with, things like radishes, because that works up the soil. Or turnips or beets.
You do those in the soil, though, right?
You're
talking about planting now in the soil, because you guys are ready for that. Although
right.
So
you direct seed, and I mean our last frost date, I think, is Mother's Day, so it's still good to have like floating row cover or a small little greenhouse over it just in case. But salad greens, collard greens, any of the brassicas, so broccoli, or broccoli, chard, kale,
Collards.
collard greens, yeah, lettuces, the spicy Asian greens,
kohlrabi.
yes, some of the root crops work well as well. Some of those, though, need warmer temperatures, like carrots. But carrots also have a 3-week germination period. So,
somebody taught me how to plant carrots years ago because the carrot seeds are really, really tiny. And they taught me to just make a row that had a little bit of width to it, and
like a little trench.
Sprinkle the seeds in the row and water them, and sprinkle a little dirt over them, and then put a board over them because they took 3 weeks to germinate. And then you go pick the board up after about 2.5 or 3 weeks, and you've got plants coming up and the root going down, and no weeds in there. And cool little tricks. I think you learn tricks from other gardeners.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I learned how to plant garlic from my buddy Michael Hicks. That I actually that was the farm that I worked with him to write the book, and he actually helped edit the book as well. He's an amazing farmer. He has a eco village here in town, or he's one of the co-founders of it.
It just makes me want to run out and be part of gardens and eco villages, community.
And so
it's such fun, really.
It is. I mean, we come together over food, so why not come together over growing our food?
Yes.
So when I worked with Michael Hicks, he taught me a lot. And I mean, I grow garlic because of him, basically. And so he taught me, he had this tool that I think his dad had or his grandpa had, that was, I want to say 6 or 7 inches. It was just a wooden like stake, basically, that you jam into the ground, and then you plop the clove in with the part that goes green up, and then you cover it. Put hay or mulch over it, and then it'll do its thing. I mean, garlic and onions are 2 of the easiest things to grow, by the way.
Isn't that something you were telling me about, having kind of a self-perpetuating bed like the garlic? You just don't you just keep do you replant it, or does it kind of just keep self-perpetuating?
Yeah, you do replant it. I think what I was telling you about was the Egyptian walking onions, where they're green, they're onions. You don't really eat them for the bulb, but you eat them for the greens. You can eat the bulb, but they're perennials. So you plant them in one area, they'll grow, and all of them have a stalk, and they'll put out this flower pod or the seed pod, and then as the seeds grow, they'll grow into these little itty bitty onions too. It'll fall over, replant itself, and it walks around the garden. So you have an endless supply of onions, and they're really, really good. The greens that come off of those, in my opinion, are the tastiest. And green onions can be pretty spicy.
Right.
In the springtime, they're not as spicy, but as the summer gets on, they can get hotter, just like radishes get hotter with more heat.
Oh, right.
But
they're the creme de la creme of scallions.
Exactly.
So they're called Egyptian walking onions?
Yes.
And you think you might find seeds for those maybe by looking online?
I would say so. I mean, I got them from Michael Hicks when I worked with him, and we had them at the Sprouts Garden since that, and that was back in, I published my book in 2008 or 09, so that was in 07. And they were in the garden up until, the bulldozers came to demolish it this past fall. But I took as many of them as possible.
Neat.
so I can plant them in my gardens, but also I saved a bunch of stuff that I will be giving to the Sprouts people when they have their next garden, or whoever they're going to be growing this next year. But I mean, there's all kinds of stuff like that. And that's one of the things you want to take note of what can be grown every year, or what can be grown indoors. Like green onions, you can cut the bottoms, the roots off. I usually leave about 1 inch to 2 inches and put them in some water, and they will grow green. They'll grow the greens again.
Nice.
You can just keep
every once in a while you see one of those little posts online that says 10 different vegetables that you can cut the bottom off of and put it in your kitchen in water, and it'll grow.
It's growing.
Again.
Yeah. So I mean, there's all kinds of resources like that online. But as far as growing for your own, I would say like I love cucumbers, and I love I can't remember what they're called now, gypsy peppers. And so I grow those every single year. And grow what you love, because that's what you're going to eat.
True, that's true. And you know what? This is something I want to like bring up too. We don't learn this in a vacuum. I mean, it used to be historically everybody grew their food, you know, so you learned from your parents and your grandparents and your neighbors, but we're going to have to kind of reteach ourselves how to do this. And we have these fun, modern, innovative things that are coming forth. Like Ken, you're talking about growing vertically, and the ways of, you know, having greenhouses, and maybe something people didn't have as much way back when. But it's really good to find other people who are also growing, you know, friends who are gardeners, and begin exchanging seeds with them, exchanging ideas, learning, because, and as you said, there's a wealth of information online, and we can always go look something up, but there's nothing like learning these kind of things from other people that are doing it.
I mean, that's the majority of what I have learned, I have done. And so with what I was talking about as far as growing in the springtime, like there's certain types of tomatoes that I love. There's these awesome ones that are called peach tomatoes, that they're kind of yellowish orange and they're fuzzy. You would never have expected that they taste the way they do. I can't really describe them, but they're really tasty. So it's just like you find something at farmer's market, save the seed and grow it.
And you know, I would say there's nothing so cool as I love going out in my garden when I have a bunch of herbs growing and just snipping some of those into a salad bowl with like fresh tomato, fresh cucumber. You put a little bit of lemon juice or balsamic vinegar and a little tiny bit of olive oil, a little Celtic sea salt. Oh my gosh. I mean, having fresh herbs and salads is just making me hungry.
I'm just like, my mouth is watering. I just wish it was like July.
Right.
I just want it to be July right now so I could be like out in the garden.
Well, you better
I'm pretty hungry right now. I did want to bring up two more things that we had just touched upon. One was herbs. And so within your garden, you grow vegetables, you grow fruits, strawberries, whatever, blackberries, blueberries. It's also good to have some herbs, because they can deter bugs, and they can also bring in beneficial insects.
Yes, that's another important part.
Good
companion planting, right?
Yes, exactly. Companion planting. And so it's really good to have other things like basil and tomatoes grow well together. Not only do they enhance each other's flavor, you eat them together, but basil can attract parasitic wasps that lay eggs on tomato hornworms that can basically suck your plants dry. Wow. And those are like these like 3 to 4 inch kind of white and green striped, black striped worms. They're caterpillars with a big horn on the front, and they will lay their eggs on it. Yeah, and
they
the
munch
eggs will
your
hatch.
tomato plants, right?
What? Yeah.
They munch your tomato plants.
And so these parasitic wasps will lay eggs on the worm or on the caterpillar, and then they'll hatch and eat it. So it's their food source. It's kind of, some people might think it's gross, but it's nature.
No, you know what? And that is like the amazing wisdom of understanding the garden and the plants and how things go together, and just immersing ourselves.
Well, we can do things in our garden and use it, so we don't have to just like spray it and pesticide it. You know, the whole reason why that girl said that cherry tomato never tasted like that was the fact that if you take a cherry tomato that's grown normally factory style, that thing tastes so horrible. If I take a cherry tomato that's out of my personal garden with no chemical fertilizers and no pesticides, and you eat each one of those, it's amazing. I mean, if you take that cherry tomato and you drop it in alkaline water, so water that is around 10 pH, it's going to turn that whole glass of water yellow from the pesticides. You're going to pull that tomato out and it's going to be clean. And most of our vegetables aren't getting cleaned properly because it can't break it down. It's only with high alkaline water can you really break down that kind of stuff. So that's why people aren't used to it. And then they taste that stuff that's actually fresh and they're like, I couldn't believe that cucumbers could taste so good. I couldn't believe that tomatoes could taste so good.
Ken, how would you get high alkaline water to wash the vegetables?
Well, the only way to do that is with a special machine.
Okay.
And as of right now, I can only find one machine on the market, and it runs about $4,000.
Oh yeah.
And it makes multiple different kinds of waters. And but as far as I know, is how to alkaline a water without the special machine, I have no idea.
Right.
But that's why you need to grow your own, because don't eat cherry tomatoes that aren't organic, because they taste horrible. I can reassure you that.
Right.
If you have ever had homegrown,
oh yeah,
you cannot go back to eating a container of the standard cherry tomato. It tastes like
that's very true.
So really what we want to do is get away from pesticides. We want to get away from chemical fertilizers. And some of the cool ways are companion planting. I know one of the reasons our foods taste so good when they're grown right is they have more minerals, so they have more nutrients. And actually the sugar content goes up in vegetables because of the nutrients that are there, because of the minerals. And so increasing minerals and vitamins in our soil, or increasing the minerals in our soil, so that we, and I know I've done sheet composting, I've used rock dust, there's a lot of things I've done. Daniel, what are your favorite ways of enriching the soil?
Well.
And let me jump in before you start too. There was Ruth Stout, I don't remember her husband's name, but they were an older couple that lived in Vermont, and they wrote the no dig gardening method. And I think they both passed on now in their 90s, but they were amazing. And they just taught to go out into the garden and just layer leaves, and then dig little trenches and put your vegetable, your kitchen waste in, and then just keep layering straw and leaves and kitchen waste and manure, and never have to pull weeds, because that would kind of mulch it, and never have to dig it, because you've got this natural brewing system that's creating, the worms are munching it all down, and the microorganisms, and then it's all turning into new soil, and it's richer. Those are the things I've done over the years and loved.
Yeah, that's actually how I do it.
Is it?
I don't always at the Sprouts Garden, we just brought in resources. People would donate things as well, but we had our compost pile, so we would put compost on the beds to help the nutrient base. And every once in a while, whoever was in charge would do some kind of soil test to see what the nutrients were, and then they would sometimes add things. Sometimes
is there a way you can suggest?
There.
Is there a way you can suggest people would do a soil test for nutrients?
Well,
you were at a university.
I think we did it. Yeah, we did it at university. I know we did it one, and we had to send it away somewhere, and I don't remember where that is. But I would just say look it up online. You might have a place in town, wherever.
The county ag departments, county agriculture departments, do they do that?
Yeah, that's exactly what. Yeah, right. I think they should. Anyhow. But I know a lot of times when I've looked it up, or the people that have come to the Sprouts Garden, or people I've talked to, they take their soil samples and they mail it away, and then they get the results back in a week or so. But you can also tell based upon what your plants look like. I'm not a professional at looking at nutrient deficiencies or diseases, but you can look at the characteristics, look it up in a book, or look it up as far as you can buy these picture books of nutrient deficiencies. And so basically that is one way.
So then how do you add nutrients? Have you ever had a nutrient deficiency? The thing is, once you start composting and you start doing this kind of layering method where you're adding organic matter back to the soil all the time, you tend to start getting more balance in your soil.
Yeah,
so,
and that's...
As far as adding minerals, I was taught years ago to add rock dust. You can just go to your gravel pit and get rock dust and literally add it to start adding mineral nutrients. But what other ways do you have?
Basically, I do compost and sheet mulching.
Right. And that just has been sufficient as far as your
concerned? Yeah. I mean, basically when you sheet mulch, you, like you said, you put the layers of organic matter, the browns and greens, the nitrogens and the carbons. And through all of that, you have the worms that will come up through the bottom layer and eat through all of that as it also decomposes. So you're getting worm waste, which is highly nutritious. And I mean, we haven't really had many nutrient problems at the Sprouts Garden. We had more problems with weeds than we had with anything else. So keeping the weeds down, which if we had too much rain, then we would get usually a fungus because it wouldn't dry. There wasn't enough time for it to dry, so it would just stay kind of moist. And the only way that we dealt with that was we broke foliage off so there's more airflow.
Wow, so that's innovative.
Yeah, there's just issues that you come up and, I mean, I research things and then you try it, see how it works. I know one of the places in the garden, there wasn't much done to remediate it, but it was basically on clay. So when you plant in clay, you're not going to get much of anything because clay is really compacted soil. It's got a crazy amount of nutrients in it, but if you don't put compost or manure or do something to break it down, those available nutrients are not available for the plants. And it also, clay holds water. So we had a problem with drainage as well. And so you just kind of run into problems and then you look up solutions and deal with it there. But mainly the way I do it is I add nutrients based upon, I just do sheet mulching. If I have a problem, I'll do compost tea, which you take compost, or I do worm composting. So I take the vermicompost and I put that in water. And there's different recipes that you can use for different strengths, but I put, I want to say like half, I can't remember now, but you put a certain amount of that, fill it up in 5 gallon or a gallon of water, and you pour that around the roots. And so that will give them a boost of nutrients. There's also, I've used kelp or fish emulsion, which you can't get here in Bloomington, like locally, but that's really good. And you want to make sure you do these things before it rains, because every time it rains, you might have to add it again. But
so let's just come back to, let's repeat where people can get your book. Is it available on Amazon?
It used to be.
And maybe it will be again.
Yeah, when I do the rewrite, that will be exclusively on, I mean, through me, obviously, for hard copies, but then through Amazon, I'm going to start off with like a, $1.99 or $2.99 for the first week, and then after that, bump the price up. But you can do ebook, and then you can also do a hardback.
So for people to find you right now to be able to order your book as it is, they can go to the CCN blog post on this show. They can just look up 21st Century Superhuman shows, and there's a big article on you and your background and the book. And so that's a really great place to get the book. Mm-hmm. They can also find you at evolvedministry.com and the university at evolvedministry.com/university. Is that right?
No, just evolvedministry.com.
Okay.
That's our website, because once you sign up, you'll have access to the university when you make your account.
And there's also a sign up link that benefits you that's in the blog post if somebody wants to sign up at Evolved. Awesome. And I'd like to hit a few key points here again, just to encourage people. I mean, I think beginning to grow our own food and wherever we live, even if it's in pots on our front porch. I mean, I just set up a really neat garden for my mom. I actually did last year, and it's carried over to this year, and she's in Florida. She's got squirrels and all these things on the ground. And my friend Caroline had actually made the thing originally. So there's a big plastic bin, maybe about 3 feet by 3 feet. and we've got it sitting up on sawhorses. So it's up off the ground so the critters can't get into it. And then it's got really good dirt in it. And then there's just a whole collection of, tomatoes and eggplant. Well, actually, the tomatoes are in some other containers, but kale and eggplant and lettuces and peppers. And actually, because it's Florida, they're coming back. Like a lot of the plants are coming back. And then I made her 3 big pots that have herbs in them and tomatoes. And then there's another one of those kind of things that we set up on a couple of logs to have it off the ground. And that one's got more lettuces in it. So here my mom, who's in her 80s, has this really cool little garden right on the patio, the back patio behind her house. So there's so many ways to do this. I mean, we can have a garden in our backyard. We can share a community garden with others. We can just grow pots on our windowsill. And then to consider the kind of thing, Ken, that you're dreaming of and envisioning, which is how can I begin encouraging and supporting the food is free concept, or urban gardening, or starting to change some of the urban community by integrating gardens into the neighborhoods. Another really great guy who did a TED Talk is the guy who does guerrilla gardening out in LA. And he's got, they plant medians and they're in all these poor neighborhoods, and they set up these little hut restaurants where they're actually cooking the vegetables that come out of the gardens. And it's amazing. They're doing it just everywhere, taking on public land. And I think in every town Ken, didn't you say now there's houses for sale for a couple $100s in Muskegon or something?
Oh yeah. We have areas that, they're really, really bad, and where you can get houses anywhere from $100 to like $2,000.
So you could literally take something like that on and turn it into a community garden site, and let people in the neighborhood begin making a community house out of it.
I have a friend. I have a friend in Indianapolis who he is renting land from the town. There's a place in Indianapolis called Keep Indianapolis Beautiful, and I think he's renting land from them to have an urban farm. And so that's another option, is see the abandoned lots or abandoned places in your town and see if there's a way that you can rent that plot from the city. Because if it's not being utilized, you paying them rent for it is a benefit to them. And plus,
even food. We're looking at
what?
No, go ahead. Finish.
Oh, I was done.
You can even look at to where they can even donate it to you, and that we're looking at trying to get the land donated. So they can because they just want people to take responsibility for it. They have this land, they're not doing anything with it. In census, they end up getting all this land turned over, and they can't even sell it because of what kind of area it is. And so if you can start getting people and start teaching people how to grow their own food and supply, nutritious food for their families, why not? It's a win-win.
Ken, you and I talk about this a lot. We're both part of a group that we actually founded called Global Leadership for Change. And we have projects developed, and we're working on global humanitarian funding. So if you're tired of your job, you're tired of the old rat in the cage mentality, and you're thinking of doing something different with your life, starting gardening in your community, starting gardening at home, starting urban gardens. There's so much that can happen here. And I personally believe, and I think all of us do, that this is really a huge piece to taking us into a more viable civilization. We've got to kind of leap out of this old materialistic culture that has us all just, running around making money so we can pay for houses that are kind of separated from nature, and begin reintegrating a little bit. So, there's so much that can be done, and hopefully we've stimulated some ideas here. And we are all resources. I'm still working on getting our website rebuilt, but we have 21stCenturySuperhuman.com, where you can find both myself and Ken, and we both do coaching and support. Daniel, are you doing coaching these days?
At Evolve Ministry, through, we do it through Skype, but through the university, but also through, we have a forum, like I said before.
Nice.
And so people post, we have good, basically when someone posts, someone's going to come on and comment. And so it's kind of like Facebook, where you make a post and then someone comments below it and you respond or someone else responds. And so it's this dialogue that begins. It's a forum. And, you know, we teach self-mastery there. And
you're also moving into teaching gardening there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and I mean, there's a couple other courses I'll be developing over time as well, but
nice.
We do, I would say we also do like counseling, because a lot of our students, they're waking up, they're understanding that there's more in this world than what appears to be in front of us.
Yes.
They're having spiritual experiences or scary experiences that they don't know how to understand. And so they talk to us, and I also am on Facebook. And so we talk to people.
So Daniel, on Facebook, you are Daniel Atlas, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, you are. I know you are, because I look you up all the time. We're friends. So Daniel Atlas on Facebook, and Ken is Ken Chorley, Chorley, and I'm Cary Kirastar Ellis on Facebook. That's a really great place to keep up with us too.
Yeah, I also wanted to say that there's many Daniel Atlases I have recently discovered. So if you want to find me, I mean, obviously, like you might see Evolve Ministry somewhere, but my pictures are having to do with kind of consciousness. And so if you find that, that is me.
Yeah, you have some kind of light body pictures up there, right?
Yes.
I remember those. Okay.
Correct.
So we're all available and accessible, and for all of us, Daniel, Ken, and myself, our lives are really committed to opening up this new path on the planet for assisting those who are searching for how to live more in their hearts. We have this ongoing show once a week, and so we're going to have many more guests, really exciting 21st Century Superhuman guests every Sunday night. We actually read the book 21st Century Superhuman and have some stimulating discussion about that. So we really feel like we're access points for some exciting things that are going on the planet. We're connected with communities. We're connected with community gardens. We're connected with global humanitarian funding. And we want you to join us. We want you to join us on the path. Listen to your heart. Listen to what your heart is telling you, and begin paying attention and living the kind of life where you can discover joy and discover the kind of creativity that is really our nature. And sometimes it's a little bit painful going through that process. Sometimes our friends leave because we don't have that much in common with them anymore, and we have to make new friends. And we join with those who are living similarly, and we learn from each other. We support each other in this growth. We've got just a couple more minutes. Go ahead. Do you have a closing thought, Daniel, you wanted to share?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for being here with your beautiful smile.
Thank you for having me. This has been a great time. I hope I can be a part of some of these in the future. But I wanted to say that we see people around us doing the things that we want to do a lot of the time. It takes one step forward to make the change you want to be in the world. I know that's kind of cliche, but if you don't like what's going on in your life, only you can change it. And it might be terrifying, it might be scary, but once you do take that step, you'll see that how your life changes. It might be difficult, yes, but you'll be happier with yourself. And I like to say that as a gardener, I like to plant seeds of change wherever I go. So I encourage you to plant those seeds as well. Those can be thoughts, those can be gardens, those can be humanitarian efforts, picking up trash. Try to be an example of what you want to see in the world.
Yes,
because one of the things we teach at Evolve Ministry is that we are universal in nature. We are all connected. We are all reflections of each other. So we need to take care of ourselves. We need to take care of our earth, take care of our
we're in our last few seconds, Daniel. 1 minute left. And yes, I totally agree. Thank you. That is well said.
Yes, no problem.
Said. And I just honor you for your presence and being here. Ken, my beautiful brother, thank you for the journey that we have shared together for many months, and will continue. I just always appreciate your input and your shining face as part of the things that we're doing.
Yep.
Thanks for having me. And like Daniel said, like, this is a time to take action. So take action in your own lives.
Okay, many blessings. Much love to all, and see you guys soon.
Love you.